Okay, I've just checked the tram on the mill and it's within 5/10 of a thou. So I'm not even going to worry about that 5/10 of a thou over about, I don't know, 250 mil. So that's not too bad. I think we'll leave it at that. I won't get too carried away. Alright, let's get this slab of steel up and let's start getting a lick across the deck as a reference face to start with. I've only just set this on the table. I've only stoned the bottom of the block, sat on the table, and I've got my little surface gauge with a test indicator on it. So let's have a little bit of a look-see, and that's probably the garbage trucks you can hear at the front there. Hopefully it stayed in frame. That's 0.01 of a millimetre. Bring it over the other side and let's have a look at it. Right, hopefully you can see that a little bit better. So I haven't touched the gauge. That's bang on 0. There's a bit of flakiness on this look of it as well, but let's just have a look and see how that comes out. Oops. That's 0.05. And back to 0. So within a couple of thou, the other side's dead nut 0, 0. So I'm really happy with that. I'm going to use my little finger clamps, my little button clamps. We're going to lock this down. I'm just going to deck the top of this, just for a reference surface to work off the top of those dovetails. So I'm taking off about 0.2 of a mil off the deck. This is a 100 mil facing cutter that I've got, and it's cutting very well. Yep, little tiny step there. Well, that machined up beautifully. You really can't feel the transition. That's probably a little bit rougher on this one is all you can feel, but there's nothing there. So very happy with that. Alright, I'll get this flipped over and I want to machine up one reference face that I want to set up for the dovetails. So maybe get two, we'll see how we go. But I'll need to get this up on some packers, up on some parallels. All right, I'll make that happen. Alright, so I've run that over for a big facing mill and I cannot feel, you can see a shadow but there's nothing there. That's the other side. So I've run this over 3 times backwards and forwards just to make sure everything washed out and to get that as flat as I possibly can, because that will be the final surface. I may grind this, I don't know, we'll see how we're looking anyway. I'm just going to give that a touch with a stone. Just give it a rub over and we'll start setting up for machining out the dovetail sets. Alright, I've still got this marked out, my boundaries. So this one's got to come out a fair way. Now the reason I did that is I wasn't sure on the type of gib I was going to be using. As I said, I had that split arrangement that I was going to use and then push up. But since I'm going with a cast iron gib, we'll take that material out. A little bit to come out on this side and about 4 mil to come off the bottom. Now I'm just going to be roughing this out. I won't film it, it's pretty boring just watching cut after cut after cut, just getting it down, but I'll bring you back when we're ready to start the finishing out and obviously Alright, we're down to the final base cuts now, so we'll get this cleaned up. Got 0.4 of a mil to come off, and then we'll bring the sides back and we'll start cutting the dovetails. Okay, I've got a 60-degree dovetail cutter in the collet here at the moment. Now, this is one I bought from Randy Richards in the shop quite a few years ago. It's not 55, as I said, it is 60. That is the one we're going to finish it off with, but I can use this to rough this out and get 85% of the material out and try and save as much on the high-speed steel cutter as I can. So we're going to see how we go with this. I've never used this one before, so take our time and let's see how it does perform. From what I've seen on other guys that have used these, they've had no issues at all, but we'll see how we go. Right, that seemed to go quite well. That was a 2mm depth of cut. I'll continue on with this until we're getting full face cut on this. And we'll bring you back when we're getting close. Alright, that's as far as I'm going to go with this little Randy Richards dovetail cutter. I'm cutting full depth or full face on that edge. So we'll set up with the 55-degree high-speed steel cutter, and we're just going to take it very, very easy. But yeah, must have been, I'm very, very impressed with this little cutter. Not good. I'll go back and try and nip that up a bit tighter. Looks like no damage done. Caught it in time, I think. Right, so what I've done is I've taken the whole arbor out of the quill and put it in my vise, and I've done this up as tight as I possibly can to prevent that from happening again. What else I'm going to do too, I had that on auto feed, so I was very, very, very lucky to catch that when I did. No broken teeth or anything damaged. So I'm just going to feed this by hand from now on. Alright, so that's the first cut, and yeah, very, very smooth apart from our little incident there. Just check the datum point of the cutter back to that face there, and it's within a couple of tenths of a thou, so we haven't bent the arbor at all, fortunately. Or I should say the cutter at all. Alright, we'll come in another 1.5 mm and we'll see how that goes. May even go a little bit deeper, but yeah, so far so good. Dovetail came out very, very nice finish on that. So I'm really happy with that. It did jam one other time. Yeah, very nervous. So I did hand feed it through and stressed an awful lot doing it. But we got there and it came up very nice. Okay, so second dovetail. Now this is the one that is going to be up against the dovetail on the other table. All right, that's much better. I've got that cleaned up nicely now. You can just feel a small edge, but it did dust across the top here, so I'm pretty happy with the way that's come out. It's a mirror finish on the inside. I hope I get the fixed dovetail side done the same way. This is the one that has the gib. So we'll see how we go. I do need to knock a little bit off that edge, just with an end mill. But we'll get everything sized and finished off, and we'll see how we're looking. Okay, I've just done a measurement between my buttons, and that's measuring up at 108.87. That leaves me with 0.96 of a mil to go off this face. So I'm going to pack it in for tonight, and we'll come back tomorrow and get that back to size and cleaned up. Alright, very happy to say the dovetails are now finished. So I've only just finished this and just cleaned it down a little bit, so these are a mirror finish. So this side is going to be for the gib, this side pulls up on the taper on the table. Now one thing I found with this dovetail cutter, probably 3 mils at sweet spot as far as depth goes. I did leave a mil on for the final cut on this, and it jammed up 3 times. So a little bit white knuckling, I can tell you. The other thing is too, this cutter is cutting full width on the face. As a matter of fact, it's actually given a small undercut in here, so it's cutting maybe about 1/4 of a mil below. So I'm going to have to run through that with an end mill just to give that an edge and also give us clearance on the point of the dovetail on the table. All right, now I haven't measured this, so we're going to do this for the first time. I've got the button sitting there, so let's just see what it's like for measurement, and also let's see what it's like for parallel. So I'll set it up on the stand. I'll get my digital calipers and we'll see how we go. Okay, we're aiming for 109.84. So as I said, I haven't measured this yet, so we'll see how we're looking. Now, I don't have any other way of measuring this other than maybe some inside mics, but I'll get it there. Got to make sure the buttons are in the same spot, and then we just swing it. Right, the low spot that I'm getting is 109.88. So we're 0.04 off our target size, and I'm very happy with that. Right, let's see how parallel we are, eh? Alright, 109.89. So I'll take that as being parallel. Alright, let's do some checks on this now. So I've got that unclamped, just sitting on the table as it is. I've cleaned everything down, and that's reading That's reading 0 there. I'll bring it across. .01 up. Let's bring it across to the other side. I hope you can see that that's reading 0. I hope you can see that that's 0.01 up. So I guess we're probably about 0.3 of a thou at those 4 points. So I'm very, very happy with that. I think the stress relieving was worth it. You get 2 or 3/10 of a thou after machining from side to side. Very, very happy with that. Alright, I'm going to take this over and sit it in the slotting machine. Let's sit it on the slotting machine table and just see how it fits up and see how accurate I was for my sizing for the gib. So the gib at the moment's 12.3 wide. I've allowed 0.1 of a mil, 4th hour cleanup to bring it back to 12.2, but let's just see how close I was with my numbers. Alright, I think the best way I can measure this is with a ball gauge and just sweep it side to side. I've got 2 here. I'll give this one a go first. See if I can get it. Alright, let's have a look. Hopefully you guys can see that. As I said, we're aiming for 12.2. Oh, it's 12.2. 12.24. It's 0.04 out. It's at a couple of thou. I'm not complaining about that. That's alright, let's lift it up and we're going to check that other side. I'm sort of expecting this to be a little bit more. I'm being a little bit more worn, but I guess we'll find out in a minute. Bring that up a bit. Alright, let's see how we're looking. Alright. 0.01 difference. That leaves me with a couple of thou to clean up on the gib plus a bit of clearance, so I'm looking at about maybe 5 thou on the gib to fit up inside there. I'm absolutely wrapped with that. All that hard work has really paid off. Very, very happy. You can see that little anomaly that we've got there, whether that's a lap or whether that's someone's ripped into it with a grinder. I'm going to take a little bit more off that, take a little bit off that face, and then we're going to put a 45-degree arris around the perimeter of this, so we might be able to hide a bit of that. But all my numbers, all my pre-measuring to get these sizes, and I'm within 2 thou at the end of it. I'm very, very happy. You can see that how much more bearing area we do have on this now. And we're right into where it has been scraped in the past. The old one came about halfway to about here. So we've actually doubled that bearing area quite considerably. And as I said, I'm just going to lick this up along here so that it's maybe half a mil sticking over, just to protect us from any egress in either end. We've got quite a bit more work to do on this. We've got to cut oil grooves, we've got to cut the gib adjusters in here, we've got to cut for the gib lock. Oiling system's got to go on it, so there's an awful lot more to get done on this, but that pressure point of doing the dovetails is now finished. I can now sleep. And absolutely wrapped. We came out within around 2 thou of our target dimension. Alright guys, I've come up against a little problem here, and I'll show you what's going on. So I've got my test indicator on my surface gauge. I'll probably not be able to see that, but that's reading 0 there. Come across to here. That's reading 0 there, so we're 0, 0. Over on this side, we're about 0.2 low, or 0.02 I should say, sorry. On this side we're reading 0. But this is the problem that I've got. I might bring the camera around. Zoom on this thing is hopeless. Alright, so that's reading 0, 0. But when I bring the plate across into the gib, I should say into the dovetail, it jumps up to about 0.05. So it lifts up about 2/1000 of an inch, just as it's coming into the gib. Now I'll show you something on the old table that used to sit on here, and you'll see what's going on, what I mean. I hope this is going to show up, but there is a definite line down here. You can see where it's rubbing harder here than anywhere else. You can see how that there is a definite line all the way down there. And that's where it's been bearing. So I reckon in a dovetail there, when they've cut that, it's created a step. So the only way I can see out of that, I could sit there with emery and rub away. I haven't got any stones that'll fit in that far, and a stone or 5 tooth out, yeah, it may be. Another option I've got is to machine a very, very small land on my section there, so we get outside that issue. Still got plenty of bearing area there, but it's going to make sure that my table is going to be dead smack true to the other table. You can sort of, hopefully you can see that. As I said, it's up about 0.05 tooth out. So that's something we're going to have to correct to get this back and true. Anyway, these are all little tests we've got to do just to find out where everything is at and what we need to do to overcome these little issues so we get a true table. Alright, I'll deal with that a little bit later. I'm going to start doing some work on the gib now. Alright, I'll catch you back in a little while. Alright, one last check on this with a feeler gauge. That's a 0.05mm feeler gauge, that's 2 thou. Now, I did use my test indicator in underneath here, but the setup I had, you couldn't see the dial, so there was really no point showing that one. But this will be a lot clearer. So we've got that pulled up hard into that dovetail now, and that only just slips under. It's a bit tight there, but that only just sits under. So if I take it off the dovetail, that does not go under. Alright, and it's the same on the other side as well. Alright, I think we've checked this to within its nth degree, so we know exactly what the problem was, or is, and we know how we're going to fix it. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, I guess just one final sanity check. So I've got my table sitting on top of the y-axis table. I've got my angle plate set up with a dial indicator. This will be the ultimate test. So I've actually moved the plate back away from that dovetail where we've got that step. Let me get in there and see if we can crank this without knocking the camera around too much. Alright. So we're about 1/2 thou over 0 there. It's bobbling around a little bit, but I think we're back to sort of like 1/2 thou again. Just let it drop down on its own weight. Well, I'm very, very happy with that. Let's try it in the other direction. Check the table out the opposite way, 90 degrees. Okay, this is 90 degrees. Alright, I'm very happy with that. Maybe a couple of tenths in it in both directions, so geez, I don't think I could hope for any better than that. Alright, I'm thinking I might finish the table off. I'll finish the machining off. We'll get that little relief cut in there so we get away with that step. And we'll get the deck recut again, and we'll get the edges all finished off. So this table will be complete. So we might focus on that. Alright, I've pulled my table in hard up against the dovetails, which we know gives it that lift. So I'm keen to see how much out, or whether that does make a difference. But let's just run it up and down, and run it down and see what we get. Alright, 1.5 thou. 1.5 thou over about 100 millimeters. Just bring it back up the top. Let's see if that's come back to 0. And it has. So yes, it certainly makes a difference, doesn't it? Alright, let's get into machining. Alright, plan is to remove about 1 millimeter off this surface here. I'll bring the camera over and show you why. I've got this edge here which tapers away, which I want to try and remove. I don't want to be sitting there looking at that for the rest of my life when I'm machining, thinking, why didn't I take it out? So I'm going to take it out. Unfortunately, we're going to sacrifice a little bit of thickness to do that. But I'd rather have this table looking schmick than leave that in. Alright, I'm going to run it over with my face mill. And we'll see how that looks. If need be, I'll set up my fly cutter and give it a lick with that for a final finish. I'm going to take about 1/4 mil off. Well, it's a bit disappointing. The last 2 cuts prior to this finish pass were absolutely perfect. Now this final pass, I've got those little scratch marks in it. So I'm going to set up my fly cutter, take about 5 thou off, and bring that surface back up again. I was hoping to leave that as a machined surface looking like that, but anyway, we'll set the fly cutter up. We might as well make it look right. Alright, I finished machining with the fly cutter, and there is absolutely nothing there. That is dead flat. These lines you can see here are edges from the previous cut. And I've got my little indicator here. I've got to be careful. It's got a long stick sticking out from it, just to run over them. I'll go this way. And you can see, well, hopefully you can see, there is absolutely no change in that needle over those joints. So that is just dead flat. I can feel a change in texture, but I can't feel the edges. Why we've got a different texture from what we've got here, I have no idea. I hadn't changed anything on that, feed speeds or anything. This is a much brighter finish. This is a more of a satin finish on here, but there is no edge on that. I'm very, very happy with that. I'm going to leave it. It's got character. Well, that's what we'll call it anyway. All right, let's get set up now for doing the edges and getting those finished off, and then we'll cut that little relief in that we need to do to relieve that little tiny raised section in that dovetail. Alright, I've just blackened up that section of the table and slipped it onto the dovetails of the y-axis. That's the original table that was on it, or it is the original table. And you can see the witness that's been left there, where it is riding up high. And it's about 3.5 mil in. Don't worry about that, that's where I scuffed it trying to get it onto the dovetail. It's pretty heavy. But you can definitely see where that land is on the old table, the existing y-axis table. So, as I said, we've measured that with a feeler gauge, and I've done it with the with my test indicator, and it's 0.05, 2 thou deep. So we're going to go about 3 thou to relieve that. I'm also going to take a smidgen off the front here as well, probably about 1/4 mil. Looking at it, it's in fairly close to that nip on the dovetail on the old table. Well, I'll bring you back when that's done. It's not worth showing you what's going on here. Once we've done this, I then want to start machining all 4 sides back to dimension. So this one needs to come in. You can see where I've scratched that line. I want to leave it around about 1/2 mil proud of the old table. Alright, we'll get in, we'll get that machined up, and we'll set up our horizontal head on our milling machine and start machining the edge faces. Alright, we've got our little relief machined in here. I've gone about 3 thou on that. 2 thou was our interference, but I've gone 3 thou, trying to keep that as close as we can. And we've taken a little bit, as you saw, off that nose. Alright, we'll get set up now to start machining all 4 sides back to dimension. Final cut on this side, and you can just see my scratch line, my scrobe line. I hope you can see that, about 1/2 mil off. So this will be hanging over, this edge will be hanging over about 1/2 millimeter over the y-axis table. Alright, let's have a look and see if we've been able to achieve what we wanted to achieve. Now, before I did that little relief, we were jumping up about 2 thou, 0.05 of a millimeter. There was a false machine inside that dovetail. So let's have a look and see if that has now gone. So the test indicator right there, reading 00. We're off the dovetail there. I'm going to come back onto the dovetail. I can't really see that because the camera's in the way, but I'm assuming we're at 00. Alright. I'm very, very happy with that. We've got all 4 sides now machined, dead square to each other, and square to the upper face. And we've got a roundabout, just feeling it, 1/2 mil hanging over the edges, which is exactly what I wanted. Alright, I guess the next thing I want to tackle, I'm either going to do the oil grooves, or we're going to do the drilling and tapping into this for the gib adjuster. Alright, I'll leave it at that for now, and we'll come back with some more machining, I guess. Okay, see you soon.